A couple weeks ago, a screenshot went viral. A benchmark leaderboard with Google's newest AI model circled, sitting below models that are cheaper, older, and built by companies with a fraction of Google's budget. The caption asked if this was the worst thing DeepMind has ever shipped. The numbers backed it up. So that's what I want to dig into today. Not the meme, but what's actually going on underneath it. Because it wasn't always like this. Go back to February of this year, and Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro was sitting in first place on that exact same leaderboard. Not competitive with the leaders, the leader. And what made it notable wasn't just the score, it was how they got there. That model ran largely on Google's own in-house chips, instead of the NVIDIA hardware every other lab depends on. Years of pouring money into custom silicon had finally, visibly, paid off in the product itself. So the plan from there seems obvious. Build on that lead, keep pushing. Instead, here's what actually happened over the following 5 months. In May, at Google's developer conference, Sundar Pichai got on stage and unveiled the true successor, Gemini 3.5 Pro. He described it as already running internally, performing well, and told the crowd, pretty much word for word, give us until next month. A cheaper sibling model shipped that same day. The flagship didn't. Next month arrived. Nothing. Google pushed the timeline to July instead, citing extra quality work. A specific date, July 17th, started circulating everywhere as the real launch day. That date came and went too, with no announcement. Once reporters started asking why, the answer that came back wasn't just final touches. Multiple outlets reported that Google's own internal testing had flagged the model for hallucinating too much and behaving unpredictably on real tasks, including breaking down when it tried to chain several tool actions together and struggling with certain kinds of image generation. The reported fix wasn't a patch. It was scrapping large parts of the model and starting over. That's the kind of decision that's genuinely defensible from a quality standpoint. It's also the kind of decision that costs months you don't get back. When Google finally did announce something new on July 21st, it still wasn't the flagship. It was 3 smaller flash-tier models. Quick, cheap, built for scale rather than raw intelligence. One line from that announcement mattered more than the rest combined. Google's own product lead mentioned the team had already begun training Gemini 4. Think about what that actually implies. The current flagship still isn't out, and the next one is already underway. That's not the posture of a team putting final touches on something nearly done. It's the posture of a team that may already be looking past this generation entirely. As of the most recent reporting, Gemini 3.5 Pro is still not publicly available. It missed June. It missed the July 17th date. Prediction markets moved their estimates to late July, then the first week of August, and even that window is closing without a confirmed release. Here's why that timing hurts more than it would have a year ago. Nobody else paused to wait. In under 2 months, Anthropic released 4 new models, and its newest one took over the top spot Google used to hold. OpenAI put out 3 separate versions of its next model generation in that same window. A lab most people outside the industry have never heard of, Moonshot AI, shipped something that matches Google's own February peak. Every serious competitor near the top of that leaderboard has released something newer than whatever Google currently has available. Google is the only major lab in that group with nothing current to show for it. There's one category where Google is still winning, and it's worth being fair about it: cost. That flash model they did release is priced below basically every other model in its performance tier, which lines up with the same custom chip advantage that got them to first place back in February. But being the cheapest option isn't the same thing as being the smartest one. And right now, Google only gets to claim one of those. There's a second thread to this story that's gotten less attention than the delay itself, and it might end up mattering more. In the last week of June, 4 of Google's most senior AI researchers left within days of each other. Noam Shazir, one of the people whose research underpins how modern language models are actually built, left for OpenAI. Shortly after, John Jumper, a Nobel Prize winner for his work on AlphaFold, announced he was joining Anthropic. Two more researchers who'd worked on Google's coding models and pre-training also left, also to Anthropic. Bloomberg's coverage didn't hedge on this one. Their read was that it put Google's entire position in the AI race at risk. It's tempting to connect that directly to the delay. Key people leave, model slips, simple as that. But that's probably too tidy. The decision to rebuild 3.5 Pro was reportedly made on technical grounds, before most of these researchers were even gone. What the departures really point to is something bigger than one product cycle. The AI talent market has been consolidating hard around just two companies, and even Google, with everything it has, is starting to lose its own people to that pull. That's less a problem for this quarter and more a problem for whatever Google ships 2 or 3 generations from now. Given everything so far, you'd expect this to be a story about a company in real trouble. It isn't, and it's worth being honest about that too. The Gemini app crossed 900 million monthly users this past May, more than double where it was a year before. Google's share of AI-related web traffic has tripled over the past 12 months to roughly 27%, a clear, comfortable second place behind ChatGPT. The AI features built directly into Google Search are reaching over 2 billion people a month, a number no standalone chatbot company can realistically match. Because none of them own the search bar billions of people already open out of habit. And Apple has reportedly signed on to license a custom Gemini model to power its rebuilt version of Siri, in a deal worth roughly $1 billion a year, expected to land on hundreds of millions of iPhones later this year. That's not the picture of a company on the way out. It's a company with reach almost nobody else on that leaderboard can compete with. And that reach is a real part of why Alphabet's stock has still held up despite the benchmark headlines. But reach and quality are answering two different questions, and right now they're pulling in opposite directions. A product already sitting on hundreds of millions of phones has a lot less pressure to hit a strict launch date than a company whose entire business is the model itself. Google can afford to run late. Anthropic and OpenAI in this market really can't. That gap in pressure is exactly what's playing out here. Being able to afford the delay doesn't mean it's free though. It's just costing Google somewhere quieter than its own user numbers. Every week Gemini 3.5 Pro stays unreleased is another week developers are building their actual products on top of Claude or GPT or whatever else is already available. Once a team wires a model into their product, switching later isn't simple, and those choices tend to stick around longer than the model that prompted them. So what does all this actually add up to? Google was never at risk of becoming irrelevant. The user numbers rule that out completely. What it's at risk of is falling behind on the one thing distribution can't fix by itself: speed. 4 competing labs shipped 4 different flagship models in the exact stretch it took Google to ship none. You can outspend almost anyone in this industry. It's a lot harder to outspend the fact that you simply weren't ready when everyone else was. So here's the real question, and I don't think it has a clean answer yet. Is Gemini 3.5 Pro still stuck because Google genuinely refuses to release something unreliable, or because somewhere internally, the company already decided this generation isn't the one worth finishing, and the actual comeback is Gemini 4? We might know within a few weeks, or we might be asking this same question again by the end of the year. And tell me in the comments, which model are you actually using day to day, not which one you think is technically winning? I want to know what people are really building on right now.